Hey everyone, Warwick's here. So Blizzard announced a bunch of changes. Patch 11.1 early development notes have been released along with a ton of other information that's been going on. Now in this video what I'm going to do is I'm going to look specifically only at the monk changes. We're going to look at the monk tier sets, and then we'll look at the tier set data models. I'm probably going to slowly over the next few days do videos on a bunch of other stuff that I'll release over the next week or so, hopefully. With a few different classes, some other aspects of the raid, looking at models, things like that. Depends on how busy I get around the holidays with new job and stuff like that. So let's start by looking at the actual class changes that have been made. So we're going to start off with the fact that paralysis now is going to break based on a small damage threshold instead of on any damage. This was something that they kind of did across a number of different like single target CC abilities. Let me blow this up a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. There we go. My fat head's not in the way. But basically what's going on is that they're just kind of making it so that the single target CCs, a lot of them are single target CCs, are a little bit more effective in use in, I think mostly in PvE scenarios, although this does have some impact on PvP. But not as much as you think. Alright, so the first thing we're going to notice here is they skip straight to Mistweaver, which means no Brewmaster changes were announced in this patch, first set of patch notes at least. I find that very strange. I've been on the record before saying that I believe that Brewmaster is the worst tank. Although I think it's sneakily starting to get a little bit better as we start to get more and more gear. But that said, like, Brewmaster just has a lot of struggles right now with its damage intake. And the fact that Blizzard doesn't seemingly want to do anything with it right now is very, very confusing. So I'm hoping as we get further into the development cycle for 11.1 that we start to see maybe a little bit more adjustment to Brewmaster, because I think it's a tank that really needs the help. I think it's by far the worst tank. And I would argue it's one of the worst specs in the game right now. So the fact that there's no changes here is very surprising and also extremely disappointing. Alright, but let's look at the Mistweaver changes. So there's a developer's note here. We're making several updates to Mistweaver focused on smoothing out their healing output on varying sizes of targets and shifting rotational damage priority to a more intuitive space where players should optimally use each offensive spell. Should be more obvious. So basically what they want to do is mostly it's going to be about better single target healing, 5-man healing, because they're pretty good in raid. And then making what damage abilities you should use more intuitive, which I think is kind of strange, because the number one goal is always to use Rising Sun Kick first, because of all the synergies in the talent trees and stuff like that with it. So the fact that they're thinking that players don't know what to do is kind of weird. But let's look at this first new talent, Emperor's Favor. Sheelan's gift healing is increased by 150%, and its cast time is reduced by 100%, but it now only heals a single ally. I think this is actually going to be better in a raid scenario than it is in Mythic Plus. So in Mythic Plus, you like Sheelan's gift, especially if you're running Conduit of the Celestials. Master of Harmony, you can kind of skip it if you want to. But Sheelan's gift in a Conduit of the Celestials Mythic Plus build, you want the one where it heals all 5 of your party members, because it's a great AoE healing tool. So I actually think this is going to make Sheelan's gift more valuable in raid scenarios with Conduit of the Celestials, because there's that one talent where when you consume 10 stacks of Sheelan's gift, you'll get a Yulon spawn. So Sheelan's gift is required for that build. This makes Sheelan's gift better to use in single target raid situations. You basically can just instant cast drop this on a tank and get really good value out of it. So I like the talent. I think it's going to find its way into Conduit raid builds, but I don't think you take it in almost any other build. Dance of the Wind has been redesigned. Now reduces physical damage taken by 10% and an additional 10% every 4 seconds until you receive a physical attack. This is really, really good, because if there is a long gap of time between like AoE physical damage abilities, this is going to allow you to stack up quite a bit depending on how long is in between those. And in situations like Mythic Plus, you potentially can get can get quite a lot of value out of this. So I really like this as a defensive node. There was a lot of builds that were already taking Dance of the Wind because there was ways to manipulate it and make it work really, really well for you. And then some builds weren't taking it at all because there's no obvious use. This now I think makes it a mandatory pick in your class tree, because anytime you can take less damage as a healer, you value that. Jade Empowerment has been redesigned. So this is the talent that makes it so that when you Thunder Focus T, your Crackling Jade Lightning does damage and then heals your... And if you have Ancient Teachings of the Monastery rolling, you'll also heal for a percentage of that damage as you do with the rest of your abilities. So it's a very powerful... it's really good in AoE. Increases Crackling Jade Lightning's damage by 2,000% to its primary target, and then cleaves additional enemies at 25% effectiveness. I mean, 25% of 2,000 is still, like, really good. So, you know, we're not upset about that. So this is going to make Jade Empowerment, I think, something that you want to grab in all scenarios. Because now you're getting this 2,000 damage buff to your primary target, which is going to make it worth using on a boss scenario. And then, or you pick your high health priority mob. Think of, like in Stone Vault, for example, the guys that do the AoE pulse damage. You can Crackling Jade Lightning them, and then, you know, the Despoilers, that's what they're called. And then any target around them, you just cleave off of them, and you get quite a bit of healing out of it. So you go from there. Yu'lon's Whisper healing is increased by 100%. That's there's a talent for that basically makes it when you're channeling Soothing Mist into targets. Now, Soothing Mist isn't something that's taken a lot in the Mythic Plus world, but it is sometimes taken in raid healing scenarios. It entirely depends on fight. Like, I use it on Queen Anshrek because the tanks get absolutely clapped in that fight. But I don't really find myself using it on a lot of other fights unless it's a heavy tank damage fight, which there's not that many of them. At least on the heroic level. Mythic, if I were healing it Mythic, I would definitely be using a little bit more there. Blackout Kick damage increased by 75%. Spinning Crane Kick damage is increased by 30%, which is good because it makes Spinning Crane Kick's AoE potential much more straightforward, and it makes its healing off of Ancient Teachings feel a lot better. So I like that. Jadefire Awakening now causes Blackout Kick to cleave 2 additional enemies at 20% versus 70%. Okay, so they want Blackout Kick to be a little bit more like single target, fill the gaps between when you don't have a Spinning Crane Kick up, or when you'll always have Spinning Crane Kick up, but when you want to Blackout Kick to try and reset your Rising Sun Kick, that's when you're basically going to use Blackout Kick, or use it more in single target situations, and you're going to get a little more value out of it, and go from there. So that's fine. Invoke Chi-Ji, the Red Crane, now causes 3 Gusts of Mist per target versus 1, but only activates once per Blackout Kick and Rushing Wind Kick cast. The developer's note on this is that Teachings of the Monastery Blackout Kicks will continue to function to activate a gust, but not from their cleave damage. I'm a little bit worried about this because this does make the additional gusts like more powerful. Obviously, putting out 3 per target is really good. But I'm a little bit worried about stacking them up. Like right now, I've got okay haste levels. I'm not like super hasted out, but even then, I'm only getting maybe one with 2 stacks on a second one right now. So the value on Chi-Ji is not as high as it was at the end of Dragonflight, but I mean, our stats are a lot lower, so who knows? And then they move Sheelan's Gift up to above the final gate, connects it with Focus Thunder, probably so that Emperor's Favor could take its place. Or at least be implemented in with the like Shao House Lessons, that choice, that area there. So overall, the Mistweaver changes I think are very solid. I really think they are good choices, and I'm curious to see how this goes. I'm very excited to be playing Mistweaver again in Keys, and I've done a little bit of raid healing on it too, and it's still my favorite healer by far. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what this does. We'll see how it combines with things like the class sets and things like that. But I think these are good changes. I think this is all pretty positive. I don't like necessarily this right here, this only activating once per Blackout Kick or Rushing Wind Kick cast, because it kind of nerfs Chi-Ji a little bit. But I think as we get higher stats and as we get more haste going into Season 2, we'll be fine. Alright, Windwalker. New talent, Slicing Winds. Envelop yourself in razor-sharp winds, then lunge forward, dealing nature damage to your enemies in your path. Damage reduced beyond 5 enemies, and you hold to increase lunge distance, and it replaces Flying Serpent Kick. Okay, so I'm very curious about this. So I don't think you're going to use this in a raid scenario. I use Flying Serpent Kick a lot in raid scenarios to be mobility, get out, get in quickly, so that I don't lose that much DPS uptime. Having to sit there and channel, basically, and almost like in an empower system on the Slicing Winds when I'm trying to get in or get out doesn't really feel like it's going to be very useful. There might be some decent use in Mythic Plus, obviously, with trash packs. It's going to be kind of useless on bosses. So there might be value there. The biggest thing is, does it actually proc your combo strikes mastery? Because if it does, then that's another way to keep the mastery rolling, and I think that's valuable. If it doesn't, then it becomes a really, I think, a very niche talent, and it's going to entirely depend on the damage tuning as to how good it actually is. Speaking of combo strikes, effectiveness increased by 35%. So they just gave us a big old mastery buff, because right now Windwalker values haste, versatility, and then crit. Mastery is not super important to us still. You don't avoid it, but you don't chase it. Now they're going to make it so that we're probably going to be haste mastery specs in patch 11.1. That's just me thinking about it immediately and kind of reacting to this. I haven't done any math on that, but I do think it makes mastery a much more valuable stat. It doesn't become like behind haste. You know, does it become do we become haste mastery? Probably, maybe or maybe not. It's going to depend a lot on the PTR and the numbers that we get and how we play with it and how we mess around with it when we do things like raid testing and Mythic Plus testing, if they do any Mythic Plus testing. But I do think that we're probably going to be, my guess is that we would be at a 35% increase. We're going to be haste mastery, and then with crit being a good like secondary option. Like haste is going to be like clearly the number one secondary, and then reverse crit mastery is going to be like the number two. I think potentially all tied is number 2, which means that any haste piece that is an eye level increased is going to be valuable. Dance of the Wind has been redesigned. This is the same one that Mistweaver gets. Again, I think this makes it a mandatory pick in the tree. Gives us a little bit more sturdiness in raid and Mythic Plus scenarios, so we're never going to say no to that. They did do a 2% aura damage nerf, but Spinning Crane Kick got an 80% damage increase. Courageous Impulse now increases the damage of Blackout Kick by 350% versus 200%. And then Shadowboxing Dredge does increase the damage by 10% versus 20%. So they did some tweaking of some talents, trying to make some choice nodes a little bit better. They removed Darting Hurricane, which is good, and they removed Marker the Crane, which I think is good, because I think it's baseline now. And then Conduit of the Celestials, Heart of the Jade Serpent no longer reduces the cooldown of Rising Sun Kick or Flying, and instead does the cooldown of Flying Serpent Kick. Conduit of the Celestials, I want it to be good. It is a fun button to press. I think it has a lot of really cool interactions, but they probably need to do a little bit more damage tuning to it in order for it to overcome Shadow Pan in most situations. In very super required burst AoE situations, I think Conduit has some potential play, but for sustained damage, which is what Windwalker really excels at right now, it doesn't come close to Shadow Pan in my opinion. So I would like to see more tuning done to Windwalker's side of Conduit of the Celestials. Obviously, it's extremely powerful for Mistweaver, but I would like to see more done for Windwalker, because I love Conduit of the Celestials. I personally love the visuals, I love the theme, I love the idea. Outside of the corrosive dosage thing in Torghast in Shadowlands, I loved playing like an all Celestial build, where when you summoned a Celestial, it would summon all the rest. It gives that same type of feel. So I'd love to have that gameplay style be involved. I just think they need to do a little bit more to make it valuable. Alright, so let's go to the tier set bonuses. Now they're trying something a little bit different with tier set bonuses in patch 11.1, and that the 2-piece bonuses are going to be role specific: tank, healer, melee DPS, range DPS. They all have like a specific proc that is going to be valued at that. And then the 4-set bonus is going to be something tied to the spec. I'm curious to see how this is going to work. I think some of the like roll bonuses are going to end up just naturally being better for some specs other than others, and how that's going to impact things from like a high key pushing race to world first type level is going to be interesting to watch, even though a majority of players aren't there. But I think it makes for some interesting tuning possibilities, but I'm not convinced it's a good idea. I've kind of been of the opinion that most tier set bonuses, outside of outliers, are generally very mid, and people overhype the impact and the value that they have on a class and how it plays. Sometimes it forces you into a build, like there's the Chill Streak build from Season 3, I believe, of Dragonflight for Frosty Case, for example. You were forced to take a talent in your tree because your entire tier set revolved around it. Things like that I think are okay every now and then, but I think for the most part, tier sets are very unimpactful these days, and I'm kind of okay with it, to the point that I wouldn't hate if they got rid of tier again. You know, I didn't really miss it in Battle for Azeroth. It's just that Azerite armor wasn't good. If Azerite armor was good, or they had something that in place that was like a good system, then I don't think people would have been clamoring for tier as much as they do, because I think they look at it with extremely rose-tinted glasses. Hot takes about tier set aside, let's look at the Brewmaster bonus. So this is the set bonus for the role of tank. Each time you take damage, you have a chance to activate Luck of the Draw. So we're getting a lot of casino. I'm in game on my hunter. So we get Luck of the Draw, which is the tank. These are all casino themed, or goblin themed, because of where we're going. Causing you to cast Fortifying Brew for 6 seconds. The duration on that feels a little low. I mean, but 6 seconds of Fort Brew, that's still 6 seconds of DR and extra stamina. That is not causing you to use a 5-minute cooldown for it. So there's potential value in that, but I don't like the fact that it's only 6 seconds. I would have preferred maybe something like 8 to match what the damage buff you get, which is a 15% damage buff for 8 seconds after Luck of the Draw ends. So you get Fortifying Brew for 6, but then you get a damage done for 8. And so, like, I just want them to, like, line that up. Make both 8 seconds, and then from a perspective of tracking the information, whether it's on personal resource or through a weak aura or whatever, it makes that tracking a lot more simple and straightforward if it's something that you even care about. I don't think you even have to track this. Like, you might hear the drinking of Fort Brew. That's the way you trigger it, but, I just want to see that time equalized, and that means it needs to be for all the tanks. Instead of getting 6 seconds on a defensive, or 4 seconds on a defensive or whatever, just give everyone 8 seconds of their defensive. It's fine. 4-set bonus. When you gain Luck of the Draw, your next 2 casts of Blackout Kick deal 150% increased damage and incur a 2-second reduced cooldown. Blackout Kick's got a pretty short cooldown already. I think it's like 3 or 4 seconds for Brewmaster Monk. So you're getting that basically half off, which just means more Blackout Kicks. And with the build and setups that you run for like raid scenarios, Blackout Kick can hit pretty hard for single target, and then an AoE with Shadowboxing Treads. You get some good damage there. So it's just a nice, safe choice of ability to deal increased damage. I would have maybe preferred Keg Smash. But given everything that Keg Smash does already, I kind of understand that they don't. And I maybe even would have said, hey, do Rising Sun Kick, but there's no AoE synergies with Rising Sun Kick, so they kind of split the uprights well here with Blackout Kick, because you can have Blackout Kick be a strong single target ability in Raid or strong AoE ability in Mythic Plus. My thoughts overall, Luck of the Draw again, I kind of explained it already. The 4-set bonus increases your damage, but doesn't do anything to increase your defenses. Like, okay, it gives you shuffle technically, or it does things like that, but like, you always have shuffle up, so you're not gaining any defensive value out of that. And for a spec like Brewmaster, where defensiveness and tankiness is the problem with it, this tier set bonus not helping that matter is unfortunate. Now, again, I don't think tier sets need to necessarily be fixes to all the problems. I really wish they would just tune Brewmaster better. But damage is not the specs issue in this case. It is purely the defensive side of the specs issue. So not having this really help that. And some of this, like, it depends on how much this activates. Is it on a PPM basis? Is it on a percent chance? Is there an internal cooldown on it? Like, I have questions about this, because that's also going to impact how effective this really is. Alright, let's look at Mistweaver. So their roll bonus is your healing spells have a chance to imply insurance to their target that heals them over 15 seconds. Insurance is consumed if the ally drops below 40% to heal them. So don't make your Luigi jokes. If you put them in the comments, I will delete them. Alright, and then casting Renewing Mist applies insurance for 6 seconds, and the healing of insurance is increased by up to 50% in proportion to the coverage Renewing Mist has on you and up to 10 allies. So the healing of insurance is, I'm assuming that means healing is on insurance is better than more Renewing Mist you have out. So really focusing on that spread Renewing Mist playstyle. Obviously in Mythic Plus, even right now, I can cover all 5 people in Renewing Mist, because you get a short one off of Rising Sun Kick, and then you have your normal 2 charges in the builds that you run generally. For that, 3 charges in Raid. So, I think that's fine, because I mean, Renewing Mist is such a huge activator in the kit. I don't like the name of insurance. I think they should change that given recent world events in the United States, but so the roll bonus is like fine. Again, it's a numbers tuning. I saw some early numbers that was talking like 600, 700,000 HP, which is like, it's okay, but not like, it's not going to save anybody necessarily. It might save a DPS, but it's definitely not going to really save a tank. That's like a fraction of their HP. So I'm curious to see again, what's the chance to apply? Is it RPPM based, or is it a flat percent chance? What is that percent chance? Is it 10%? Is it 50%? Like, what's the numbers on it? But overall, the 4 set bonus, it's fine. Not super powerful. I don't think it's going to lift Mistweaver into being like a meta tier healer. I think the changes that they got in their spec tree are more likely to make it a potential meta tree healer, but we'll have to see how the tweaking. I know Disc Priest and Holy Priest got massive changes. Holy Paladins are not happy with their changes. Resto Shaman saw some changes. Preservation got a couple of quality of life things. So like all the healers, and Resto Druid got a number of changes as well. So like all the healers got little tweaks. So it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like as we get into raid testing and dungeon testing for PTR. Alright, let's look at Windwalker. Your spells and abilities have a chance to activate Winning Streak, which is the melee DPS buff, increasing the damage of your Rising Sun Kick and Spinning Crane Kick by 3%, stacking up to 10 times. So, again, it depends on what the proc rate is on that, what the chance to activate is, how often it's going to activate. Can you get it up to 10 stacks very easily, or you go from there, because you're not delaying a Rising Sun Kick, because it's, you know, your hardest hitting ability. And then each time you use those abilities, it has a 15% chance to remove Winning Streak. Now, is it removing a stack or removing the entire thing? So again, questions that I have, something that I'm sure we'll find out through testing, or as Blizzard does Q&As, we'll find out more. 4 set bonus, Fist of Fury applies 1 stack of Winning Streak when cast and when finished channeling completely. So they are encouraging no more Fist of Fury clipping, which we haven't done in this expansion as far as I'm aware of, at least. So that's fine. So you're getting 1 stack on cast, 1 stack on finish of channel, which is fine. That also makes the next Fist of Fury increased by 5% per stack when Winning Streak is removed. Once Winning Streak is... Your Winning Streak is always removed once it reaches max stack. So once you get up to 10% or 30% on your Fist of Fury, or you get 10 stacks, you get a 50% chance on Fist of Fury when you remove the Winning Streak. And then... So yeah, this is something that you're going to have to play around with. This could either be very, very powerful, or it's going to be extremely underwhelming. I don't think there's a swing place on it. Now, Windwalker hasn't had a set bonus that has been like mega impactful in quite a while. It's probably Antorus when that has happened, but that said, I'm curious to see how this is. Again, I have a lot of questions. Overall, for the monk class, I think if you're Brewmaster, you're kind of meh about your set, because it doesn't actually fix the problems that you have with your spec right now. The Mistweaver one, it's going to entirely depend on the chance to apply insurance. The Renewing Mist coverage is cool and interesting. It really pushes new players to say, hey, casting this ability often is the right thing to do. And then for Windwalker, it enhances the weaving because you're getting Rising Sun Kick, Spinning Crane Kick, and Fist of Fury all being impacted by this tier set bonus. So it really pushes and encourages that weaving of abilities, which is the Windwalker Fantasy. Now let's look at what the data mined tier set models look like. Now I don't know exactly what these would be. I'm going to assume this one is the LFR, but the very first sense that you get from looking at this is we're going Super Saiyan. If you're a Dragon Ball Z fan. If you're old enough for it. If you're too young, go watch some original Dragon Ball Z. Enlighten yourself with some anime. But here you get more like the orange tints. Obviously the feet, the boots are either not implemented or that's intended, and we're gonna have exposed toes for this this patch. But I like the little touches. I like this little like two-part snowman thing here. The mask with the tiger type look to it, or a dragon type look to it, is pretty cool. We're getting the exposed chest here, which is always good. This really feels like a true like ninja monk. The cloak I would prefer to not have on there, but I mean they're gonna do it. That said, the red also looks really cool. This red and like dark gray, dark blue type set. Really like that as well. The green is a banger. I'm assuming this is going to be LFR, normal, heroic. And then the mythic set is the blue in the color because of all the extra effects on the helm. I really like this monk set, actually. Is it better than the 20th anniversary set? I don't know. I'll probably mess with it and put it on if I collect the full set, especially on the heroic level. But I really like it. So overall, class changes, again, Brewmaster puzzling that there's not any changes there, but I like the Mistweaver changes. Windwalker changes are interesting. We'll have to play with it and see. Tier set bonuses, there's a lot of questions I have, but I'll know more once we get into the ability to test it. And the set looks banger. So I think overall Monk should be cautiously optimistic, and if you're Brewmaster, you got your fingers crossed that more happens. So that's my thoughts on the Monk 11.1 changes that we know so far. Any comments that you have, of course, like, share, subscribe to the video, put your comments down in there below. Let me know what you think. And until the next video, I hope you all stay safe. Hope you enjoy yourself. If you're having fun, you keep on gaming, and I'll see you next time.